they are the experts when responding to an emergency. So really, it's important that you work with those folks. And in my years of working across the United States, I've yet to find any fire chief, police chief, sheriff who was not willing to help a school, help a college, improve the safety of their campuses. So when we talk about the 5 layers, the first layer is emergency management. And those of you who have taken courses similar to, IS 100, Incident Command System, IS 200, 700, 800, some of you might have actually had to take IS 300 and 400, depending on your level of involvement in your campus. But this emergency management plan, it's a circle. We start with preventing and mitigating. We can't prevent a tornado, but how can we mitigate? How can we reduce the damages if a tornado occurs? How are we prepared? Do we have plans in place? Do we have a response? And who's responsible for responding? And then the last piece is the recovery piece. And I think a lot of times organizations forget how important recovery is. And this doesn't matter if you're a school, a college, a hospital, a business. If you've had a disaster occur, if you've had a significant event occur, how do you get back to the business of whether it's teaching, running a college, getting your hospital back open? You need to have that recovery piece in place, including psychological recovery. You're going to need to have something for your folks because of the trauma that has occurred with them. You're going to have emergency response plans. What I really like is most states require that schools have some kind of emergency operation plans. These emergency operation plans are written in conjunction with your first responders, and they're multi-hazards or all hazards. They cover everything, not just fire drills or active shooter drills, but they could be a hazmat situation. They could be a lost or missing child. It could be a suicide prevention. And for those of you, whether you're in K-12 or higher ed, I am hoping that you are utilizing the REMS TA Center because they have free plans that you can use that meet all state and federal requirements. Layer 2 is we're going to need to have the incident command system, and we're going to need to train administrators and staff. Now, those of you I mentioned earlier, IS 100, you can take that online through the Emergency Management Institute. It's a free course. The federal government provides so many things for free. But really, when you think about those of you who are not familiar with the incident command system, it is what we do every day. Somebody is in charge, and 9 times out of 10, it's the building administrator. But when an incident becomes large and expands, they're going to need additional help from other people. They can't do it all alone. So we use this 5 to 7 person ratio that one person is in charge of 5 to 7 people. One person is in charge of 5 to 7 people. If you get 8 people, then you divide it into 2. One person is in charge of 4, the other person in charge of the other 4. It helps with your span of control. And if those of you that are listening that are law enforcement or firefighters, we've been using the incident command system since, fire has been using it since fighting wildlife fires. It became mandatory back after 9/11 with Homeland Presidential Security Directives numbers 5 and 8. And that's why we use the incident command system. So what's really cool is if you're an administrator and you're using the incident command system in your building, in your district, an event occurs, police and fire show up, you're now in what's called unified command, and you're using the exact same structure and organization. So it is definitely a great thing to have. If you haven't taken it already, again, you should be at least in IS 100. You can usually take these courses in person from your state or county emergency management administration. Layer 2 is going to include training. And one of the things that we really want to make sure that we train is in things that are most likely to occur. As you look down that list, everyone knows what fire drills, severe weathers. Some of these might not be clear to you. For example, class evacuation. What do you do if in the middle of class, one of your students has a medical emergency? Well, we need to get the students who aren't involved to another classroom, to another area of the building. Stay put is what we use quite simply when we just don't want students to change when the period ends. It could be because of a medical emergency, a custodian problem, whatever. So we tell them to stay put. Secured perimeter, most of us are in all during the day. It's where no one can get into the building unless they're buzzed in. But in a secured perimeter, there might be a threat outside of the building. And so we don't let anyone in or out until we're given a all clear. Reverse evacuations, this is simply when you're outside on recess and there's a tornado warning or something like that. And so you bring everybody inside. And we're familiar with intruders and lockdowns if in the event of an active shooter. So we'll talk about that at another time. I like to use the class evacuation. If we need to get somebody out of the classroom, I use this picture here as a lessons learned. We had a disruptive or belligerent student, and instead of evacuating the class, they called in the SRO. And then when the SRO did what they were legally responsible to do, in this case, somebody was there to film it. Well, if they would have evacuated the classroom, chances are they could have de-escalated the situation. But even if they didn't de-escalate the situation, there wouldn't have been anyone there to record the event that happens. But, if you have a medical emergency, you send the students to another classroom, the teacher in the second classroom notifies the office, and then it gets help for the teacher. So layer 3, these are our exercises. Now, this is from the Homeland Security Exercise and Evaluation Program. And I know that this looks kind of confusing, a lot of information, et cetera. But really, it's quite simple in that what we do is we develop our preparedness strategies, identify program resources and funding. So when you kind of look up here, who are going to be your program resources? Where is your funding going to come from? This could come from your local government. This could come from your county government. This could come from your state government. And you want to constantly be doing these exercises and evaluations. And, the biggest part about an exercise and evaluation is we are testing, number one, our plan, and number two, we're testing the training that supports our plan. So when you do an exercise, you're going to ask yourself a couple of questions when you're done. What did we do well? What would we do if we had this situation occur again? And then you're going to ask, do we need to change our plans? Do we need to change our training? And it's this continual cycle. I think it's important to understand, for as complicated as that picture looks like, if we look at this and take it in the stair-step approach. So, when you have your seminars, your workshops, your tabletops, your games, these here, in a sense, this is a seminar or a workshop. And then a tabletop exercise is simply going to be a discussion-based. Drills are going to be what you normally do every year, fire drills, tornado drills, active shooter drills. A functional exercise, you're testing how your district or university's emergency operations center is working. And then a full-scale exercise is you are running this in real time with moving people, moving pieces. The last thing you want to do is say, okay, I get what Gary is saying. We need to do this exercise to test our EOP, and so we're going to do a full-scale exercise. If you started with a full-scale exercise, you're going to fail. This is a crawl, walk, run. And so we always start with training, your seminars and your workshops. And then we do a tabletop just so we can walk ourselves through the process. I had a college one time, and they wanted to do an exercise. Their C-suite, their administrators had never had incident command system training at all. They had no idea what an incident commander, what, the planning section, they had no idea of it. I said, well, what do you want to do for your first exercise? And they said, we want to do an exercise where one of the students gets kicked off the basketball team. So they come into the basketball game and they shoot a bunch of people, and then they go to a dorm and they have hostages. And I said, boy, if you do that exercise, your leaders will never want to do another because they'll fail. So let's do one that they can be successful. Those of you that started as educators and moved up into administration and into safety and security, this is no different than when you teach your students a lesson with objectives, and then you give them a test or a quiz to see how well did I teach them, how well did they learn. You want them to be successful. And part of that is, we talked about a little bit, the after action review. What did we do well? What would we do differently in the future? Do we need to change our plans? Do we need to change our training? And I'm not saying that this has to be a formal process, but a lot of schools are realizing that when they do, for example, their fire drills, they're simply a rote drill. No one really thinks about it. There's never any challenge to it. They never block any exits. They never, do it between class changes. But when some schools say, we really need to take a look at what we're doing because I don't know that our students are learning anything. I definitely know that our teachers aren't. So let's say, for example, you decide to do a fire drill during a transition period, which is required by fire code. So the students are changing class, and all of a sudden the alarm goes off, and now they don't know how to take care of, where are our students? Did everyone get out of the building? So that's where you can start saying, what did we do well? Well, we got out of the building real quick. What will we do differently the next time or in the future? Well, we probably should have pre-designated areas for the students to go to. We should have somebody sweeping the building. So do we need to change our plans? Yeah, we need to train people what to do if we're not in class when this happens, and we're going to need to train them on what to do. If you look at the little drawing that accompanies that, notice how long it takes to do a tabletop exercise, how long it takes to get a functional exercise ready, and how long it takes for a full-scale exercise. So these are not things that you could just wake up one morning and say, hey, do you guys want to do a tabletop next week? Now, I will tell you that with my clients who work very well with their first responders, that, we can put together a tabletop in about a month. And it takes about 2 months to do a functional exercise. But because of budgets that the fire and police have to use, it might take a little bit longer to plan a full-scale exercise just because of budgeting and manpower. Okay, layer 4, hardware and software. And, one of the things that came out of Sandy Hook, from a lessons learned is, how do we secure the front of our buildings? Now, Sandy Hook had they had the buzzer system, but one of the things that came up afterwards was how the shooter was able to shoot through the glass on the sides of the door. And you can buy protective films. Some of these are between $8 to $12 a square foot. And you can put these on doors and windows at the entry points and exit points only. You wouldn't put these over the classroom windows as a rule. But what happens then is depending on the ballistic level, some of them, the ones that are very expensive, will stop bullets. But what most of the film that we recommend is that you put a film on there that if a bullet or a sledgehammer were to strike the glass remains intact. I kind of equate this. I don't know if any of you have ever broken the side window on your car, like something hits it and it shatters into a lot of little pieces. That glass is designed to do that. It's a safety glass. But if you were to try to break your front windshield, because it's laminated, it might get a crack in it, but you still can't get out that window. And that's what we want to do. Most of these films that people are putting on their windows will not stop bullets, but it will give the people inside the building 90 to 120 seconds to get to a safe area, alert law enforcement, etc. So lots of companies that can provide this. You can Google that and get the information that you want. And when we talk about hardware and software, door barricade devices, they became real popular starting after Sandy Hook. And the problem with most of them is they violate both fire code and the American Disabilities Act. And so when you're, for example, in the state of Ohio, you can put door barricade devices on if they're provided or if they're approved by the local and state fire codes and your local building inspector. But one of the things that you need to make sure is there a device that law enforcement can use to defeat that barricade? Because I have seen barricade devices advertised, and in the video on the company's website, they showed a police officer with a Halligan tool, and this police officer was trying for an hour to gain entry to the classroom. And they were using that as a way to say, see, look how good this product is. Now, I've been in law enforcement for over 30 years, and I train police officers in active shooter events. And those of you that know first aid, remember the Platinum 10 golden hour. If I can get to you within 10 minutes and I can get you to a hospital within an hour, I'm going to increase your chances of survival if you've been shot. So with the device on there that, let's say that the bad guy is a student. The bad guy has seen the teacher use the device. So now that's the day the bad guy brings a firearm to school, gets all the classroom mates into one corner, puts the device in place, shoots everyone in the classroom, and then uses the last bullet to shoot themselves. So now there's nobody in that classroom that can open that door from the inside to allow first responders to gain entry. And so we lose valuable time. We saw that during the Columbine shooting, where one of the teachers bled out to death because first responders couldn't get to them. So, if your district and your community decides that this is something you want to do, you're going to need to make sure that all the law enforcement agencies who could be responding have the device that can defeat the lock or the barricade devices so that they can get in. And it's not just your agency, but it's all the agencies who may be responding so that they can get those. So if you decide to use those, there are a lot of them out on the market. You're going to want to work with your first responders, your state fire code, and your local zoning laws. You got to have a mass notification system. If you as a school district, you as a college have an emergency, you need to be able to notify your students and their parents quickly. And if those of you who remember from Virginia Tech, one of the lawsuits that came out and the school lost was students sued that said, we didn't know that there was an emergency and this put us in harm's way. So obviously you're going to want to make sure that you have a notification system, and most colleges do. Where I see K-12 fall down in place sometimes is they don't send messages enough to the parents. And so what happens is if something does happen, it's a minor inconvenience, a minor emergency where no students are at risk, and the school doesn't alert the parents, then the kids will send messages. And you can, unfortunately, kids are kids, and so they're going to send the wrong message or a bad message. We had an incident happen when I was a safety director where a mechanical unit seized up on the roof of the school building, and it sent smoke inside. There was no fire. It was an inconvenience. They evacuated the building. Everybody was safe. And children were texting their parents, there's a fire inside the building and they won't let us leave. And that was so far from the truth. But because that was the only message that the parents received, that's the one that they believed. So when you have your mass notification system, make sure that you're able to get those messages out. There's a lot of companies, they have an app that the building principal can use from outside of the building and still send messages to parents. IP video surveillance is probably one of the greatest Those of you that have been in this business a long time and remember when we had closed circuit TVs, and in order to be able to watch a monitor, you had to be sitting in a special room. And now with these IP surveillance systems, I can see what's going on at another campus on my cell phone or on my tablet or laptop. And in the event of an emergency, you also have the ability to let first responders see what's going on in your building. So as you upgrade through time, make sure, of course, that you're using IP systems. Another advantage of IP systems is you aren't always limited to where you can put cameras. And so you put in a system and then you realize you need more. Because you're not wiring these systems in, it's easier to be able to put in new cameras, whether it's a blind spot or whether you're having some problems in an area and you want to be able to keep a better eye on that area. Apps for you to have your emergency response plans so that your teachers always have it on their computer or on their phone. A lot of our clients also give access to their first responders because this allows first responders to understand what's going on in the school. You can download maps and floor plans and contact lists and all of those. Printing is so expensive these days. For a school district down south in Florida, they wanted flip charts, and to print flip charts, like I showed in an earlier slide, it would cost the district $60,000. And if one thing changes or something changes, you've got to make sure all of those are updated. So the federal government is really asking us to make sure that we start moving to an electronic format that they can be changed 24/7. Visitor ID systems are for more than just identifying who's in your building. Obviously, we want to have a visitor ID system that hopefully ties into our student ID system. But whenever you have a visitor come into your building, and in really, it doesn't even matter if they're going to visit a teacher, going to do a presentation, we need to keep track of who's in our building and why. So, for example, I'm a parent, and I come in and I have a trombone case, and I say, this is for my son, Billy Bob, and I'm dropping this off. Could you please make sure he gets it? Well, hopefully what happens is the administrative assistant in the office says, okay, I'm just going to need to see your ID real quick, and I need to put you into the system. The reason why that's important is, so when the administrative assistant goes into the student information system, Billy Bob's name comes up, and then there's like a yellow button or a red button or something that says alert. And they click on it, and it says, Billy Bob's father is not allowed to have any contact with him at all. Records are in the district office, whatever. Well, if that administrative assistant gives that trombone case to my son, then the school now is interfering with child custody because I'm not allowed to have any contact. And so that's why we always want to know who's in our building and why. The other reason why we want to do this is because let's say, for example, that there are 2 guest speakers in the building and there's a fire alarm. So as the administrative assistant is getting ready to leave, they grab the sign out book and they print out real quick the who's in the building. And so they get outside the building, they go to the command post, and they say to the incident commander at the command post, Mr. Sigrist is supposed to have a guest speaker. Did that guest speaker get out? So then at the incident command post, they're going to contact me and say, is your guest speaker here with you? And if I say no, well, now the guest speaker could still be inside the building. When I was taking training, we were told about a fire in a warehouse. I think it was down in Texas. And when the fire department showed up and talked to the incident commander, the foreman, and said, hey, is everyone out of the building? The foreman said, well, how am I supposed to know? I think they're all out. Well, because they didn't know, the fire department sent firefighters in. The roof collapsed on the warehouse. 6 firefighters were killed. And it turned out everybody was out of the building. So what we need to do is we need to have a methodology to let people know who's in our building, who's out of our building. Now, of all the things that I just talked about, layers 1 through 4, some of those are kind of expensive, when you talk about camera systems or window films or apps or whatever. But there are some things that are absolutely free. And to be honest with you, I think they're probably more important. And this is a positive school culture. Nobody is going to wake up every morning and say, hot diggity dog, I get to come to school today. But a child should never say, I hate school, I hate where I'm at, I hate the students. There's still not enough information, but one of the things they're saying about the shooter in Boulder is he was picked on in school, had a short temper, had been kicked off the wrestling team. There were some underlying issues that were never addressed, and part of that is addressed in a school positive culture. Okay, so because anytime there's a school, anytime there's school violence, these are all the things. We've got to have more religion. People, it always boggles my mind. People say kids aren't allowed to pray in school. Kids have always been allowed to pray in school. Teachers, administrators aren't allowed to lead prayer. So religion was never taken out of schools. We just can't. We can't promote religion. People talk about reducing gun access, better parent and supervision, mental health services. And I'm telling you right now, that is probably where we have fallen down. And at least with COVID-19, if any good thing comes out of COVID-19 is the realization that we need to have mental health for our students and for our teachers, for that matter, our whole staff. Everybody is under stress. The last one there, stop giving the shooter notoriety. This is a relatively new thing. It's I think that the name of the program is Don't Name Them. But so many people, especially the copycats, they say, wow, this person did something horrible and everybody knows their name. So this is what I want to do so everyone knows my name. And really, that's not what we want to do. And so it's more important that we remember the victims, not the person who does the bad thing. I hope I don't have to talk a lot about threat assessment teams. After Parkland shooting, the Secret Service sent 2 copies of their updated report. Those of you that have been in this for a long time, Columbine happened in 1999. In 2001, the Secret Service put out the Secret Service Safe School Initiative, and they talked about threat assessments. And threat assessments, although your initial training, if you get it done right, can be costly, maybe $5,000 for your district, less if you're a smaller district. But it's sustainable because that training keeps going on and on. And the whole purpose is, when there's a threat, and I'm dealing with the school district right now where it is a second grader who has been making threats and has been causing harm to the school and threatening to harm others. And so they have a threat assessment team in place where they evaluate it, they work with the parents, they've got counseling, they've got a safety plan in place, and now they've come to the point where they've reached out to the law enforcement agency I work with because they believe there might come a time if this child's behavior becomes so violent, not violent because of bringing a weapon to school or whatever, but because they throw pencils and they throw chairs and they try to hit people and we might have to respond. Our law enforcement agency is developing a response of how we will go, not to arrest that child, not to handcuff that child. How are we going to be there to assist the school in helping that child and keeping everybody safe? So, this is that whole collaborative piece, but the Secret Service Safe School Initiative was relevant in 2001. It's relevant in 2021. If you contact me offline, I can make recommendations to companies that I have used in the past because they were recommended to me by the U.S. Department of Education. But I really think that if we're going to reduce school violence, we have to have threat assessment teams in every school. Purpose of the threat assessment team, of course, is we want to reduce the risk of violence. We don't want to stop a school shooting on the day of the school shooting. We want to stop that school shooting when that child is first on that pathway, when they're starting to ideate about harming themselves or other, when they're thinking about bringing weapons to school. That's the purpose of a threat assessment team. We're not trying to prove that this is a bad person. We're not trying to prove that. What we're trying to do is expel the student or suspend the students. I say this all the time. People give me credit for it, but I don't think I came up with it. I'm not that smart. But if you look, for example, at the Virginia Tech shooting, there were a bunch of groups. There was law enforcement that had some concern with the shooter, and an RA had some concern with the shooter, and the shooter's roommates didn't even know that he spoke English, and there was a teacher that was concerned. So we had all these, indicators of violence, but because nobody was collecting the dots, nobody connected the dots. And so in order for us to connect the dots, when a child is on a pathway to violence or a pathway to justification, we need to connect those dots so that we can figure out what is it that we need to do to help this child get off this pathway to violence. Because any of you that have ever studied active shooter events or mass shooting events, you'll know that that person was on a pathway to violence, but that pathway is fluid. And there are stressors in their lives that put them on that pathway, keep them on that pathway. If we get enough information that we know what those stressors are, then we can take that child off the pathway. Involve the school with some safety samples. Here are some examples. When you create your task force, make sure that students are included. Do surveys. There are plenty out there. Teach students how to de-escalate fights. When you're training your staff on bullying and their behavior, remember some of the biggest bullies we have in school are the teachers. And they often bully other teachers or staff members, and they certainly bully kids. So we need to be able to see that and take care of that. Dr. Pollard loves this thing. It's called a floor plan exercise. And you take a blueprint of your school, and you have the building itself, and then you might have like symbols on the side for the internet and the playground and the bus and your way to and from school. And you can do two things with this. One is you can have the children mark on that map where and when they feel unsafe. And then you could also have them do another one that shows where and when they feel safe. And the reason I like that exercise is that's going to tell you which staff members in your building are doing the most to make kids feel good in school. They're the ones that are creating that positive school climate. And you want to key on those people to train others. Because again, positive school climate is the least expensive and the most effective way of keeping our children and our staff safe. Anyone can stop a school shooting. People always rehearse. Suicide and bullying prevention, communication, implement anonymous tip lines. In the state of Ohio, it's by law, you have to have an anonymous tip line. In the state of Ohio, if the school doesn't want to spend the money, they actually provide it for the school. Armed teachers, not with guns, but with school resource officers and mental health support. And we could talk for an entire hour about school resource officers. I want you to understand this. School resource officers are not in schools to make arrests and to handle student discipline. School resource officers, yes, can be there as a law enforcement officer, but their first two reasons to be there, they are there to be an educator and they are there to be a counselor. They are one more trusting adult that a child can have if they think there's going to be a problem. And sometimes that problem is as complex, but as simple as my friend says they want to hurt themselves and I don't know what to do. And if you have another adult in your building that can help them, that's a great thing. Always make sure you limit your access. Increase your student participation And please, please, please do not have drills and exercises that are frightening. I had a superintendent call me and said, I don't know what to do. Our school resource officer wants to do an unannounced drill, and he wants to start it by using a flashbang. And you say, wow, can anything be any worse? Yes. We had another school resource officer who wanted to shoot at the kids with a Nerf gun to show what happens if they don't pay attention during drills. Folks, we don't have to frighten them. It's bad enough as it is. So let's not have scary drills. If you ever need any drills or activities, shoot me an email and I'll be glad to help you. And then the best one is the fourth R, relationships. I cannot stress. I was an 8th grade science teacher for 26 years. And then my last 4 years, I was the school safety or the district safety director. I loved having that positive relationship with my students. I loved being able to know them, for them to know me, for me to have conversations with them outside of the classroom that had nothing to do with science. I was fortunate enough that I had been in a building long enough. I was there for 26 years that kids started telling me that I had their mom and dad when they were students. And it's that relationship that is huge, because kids will feel welcome there. So all of this is going to be in that the 5 layers of school safety. You'll be able to get that. You got an email that says click here for the resources. You'll get a copy of this PowerPoint. You have that there. Here is my contact information, and I welcome you to contact me at any time. Even if you just have a question, you just say, hey, Gary, we're thinking about getting this. What do you think about this? Or Gary, we had a situation like this. Can you do a quick AAR? Please feel free to contact me at any time. And I'm not an attorney. I'm not a doctor, so I don't charge by the minute. I don't charge at all. If you shoot me an email or call me, I'll answer the questions and I'll help you any way that I can, including all the resources that I have. So at this point here, I'm going to take your questions. And I know we have a lot of time, but the reason I wanted to give you time is I know that when I was in your position, sometimes I just wanted somebody to ask questions or to ask questions to. So I am on the questions page now. Spell and Joyce, I hope I'm in the right place, but I see a question that says, what was the activity he just mentioned that assess safe spots for students? Okay, great question. So again, get a picture of your floor plans for your school, and depending on the grade level, elementary, it might have the playground on there as well. You're going to want a computer or a cell phone to show internet. You want to do bus. You want to do to and from school. And then what you do is you have your students fill that out and say, okay, I feel unsafe when I'm on the bus. I feel unsafe at night because I get threatening messages. I feel unsafe using the boys' bathroom 4th period. And then what you do is you collect all that data, and you get your staff member who's a whiz at spreadsheets. There's also, I'm thinking there was a program you used to be able to buy, and I just, there's not a lot of money around. I think it was called Hotspot, that would do this for you. But if not, just create a spreadsheet and see if you can pinpoint, because if you get like 50 comments that say, I feel unsafe in the boys' bathroom 4th period, boy, that's an easy fix. We probably need to put a staff member there at that time. And you would never know that that was an issue for your students unless you surveyed them. And then again, the other thing that was that I talked about is have the kids put where they feel the safest, and then how do we replicate that? I was a strange person in terms of being a teacher, because I started in 1982. In 1990, I became a police officer. So Monday through Friday I taught, and then weekends and in the summer I worked as a patrol officer, as a juvenile detective, etc. And one time we were doing a safety drill, and the student said, Mr. Sigrist, I always feel safe in your class. because you're a police officer. And I said, I never bring a gun to school. And they said, yeah, but you would always know what to do if something bad happened. And so they felt safe just because they felt I was competent. And you have a lot of staff members that are just like that. So other questions that you might have. Well, I am not seeing any. I do want to tell you that tomorrow we are going to have a phenomenal presentation. Cindy Swearingen is going to be talking about human trafficking and how to recognize the signs in a school. And it's a really, we sometimes forget, because most people, when they talk about human trafficking, what they think of sex trafficking, but Cindy's also going to talk about labor trafficking, signs to look for, and what to do. And it's going to be a great presentation. I ran through it with her last week, and it was really good. So that's going to be another good one. There's a survey that I want you to fill out, if you don't mind, that just lets us know how we're doing, because our goal is, for those of you who have been to a school response conference, which we used to have before this thing called, I think it was called the pandemic came around. And we would meet in Las Vegas in either January or February every year and had a phenomenal conference. And obviously we can't do conferences right now due to the pandemic. And so what we wanted to be able to do was continue to provide information to professionals like yourself. And so we are going to be doing webinars all through the rest of this year, with the hopes that next year we are going to be able to meet in person. Because even though you get some great information, to be honest, the best person to talk to sometimes is the person beside you, who's had some of the same issues that you have. And it looks like someone's trying to type a question to me. Did my question come through? So Theodore, if you could send it to me again, because I don't see one by you, and Joyce and Sabella, if I'm missing anything. So this is being recorded, and you will be able to review it later. And here's what I like about this. And I'm not saying my presentation. I'm saying all the presentations that you're watching can be viewed at a later time. So I don't know if you guys are in a hybrid model, if you guys are back to school full-time or not. But let's say you have a staff meeting and you say, hey, let's talk about safety. Here we go. You can show one of these ones. Like I'm going to recommend Cindy's, that everybody watch that, because that your teachers are going to be the ones that are going to spot the trafficking before somebody else. And Theodore, I still don't see your question. Here we go. This maybe, are there any resources for SROs for lesson plans, especially in elementary schools? Theodore, that's a good question. In reality, what an SRO, and Theodore, if you contact me offline, I've got some things I can send you. But really what an SRO should be doing in a school is, going into the, for example, teacher that teaches language arts, and the kids are learning how to write and spell, and the SRO goes in and she talks about how the skills that the kids are learning are the same skills that she uses when she writes police reports. She has to use proper spelling and punctuation, and it has to be easy to read her handwriting. And she might go into science class and talk about what happens when people aren't wearing seat belts. So when I went through SRO school, what we were taught, and I was kind of at an advantage because I'd been a teacher for so many years, but what we were taught how to do was how to present lessons to the students based on the curriculum that they were already learning. But it was one more adult that showed that. Our fire department and police officers do not agree on barricade devices. The police officers are telling us to use these devices because they all carry the devices. The fire department will not write a variant for the devices. Here's my biggest problem with barricades, and this is a great question. The problem I have with barricades is they do violate fire code. And remember, I'm a police officer, so you probably don't want to hear me talk about fire code, but they do violate fire code and they do violate the American Disabilities Act. And, when I look at all the active events that have occurred in this country, a barricade device wouldn't have made a difference. Those of you who do anything, if you're ever looking for a great resource, Texas School Safety Center, everything they do is based on research. And you increase your chances of survival in an active shooter event by 70% simply by being behind a locked door. And so, when you talk about the barricade devices, barricade devices are for when the bad guy is already there. I would be willing to say that if you took all the money you put on barricade devices and you put it into training your staff for prevention, that would be more effective, because school shootings, I mean, if you look at the Parkland shooting, for example, teachers didn't even have their classroom doors closed during the shooting event. So what good did that barricade? So it is a local decision. So if you guys all agree to have it, then that's okay. But if there's a struggle between the police and fire, this is one of those cases where fire wins because fire code trumps everything. Again, me as a law enforcement officer, I was the breacher. I was the person who had the shotgun that was specifically designed to breach doors. And I know with a barricade device, it's going to slow me down from getting to the inside. And that's why I struggle with barricade devices. It's going to slow me down from getting inside. And if you work for a small jurisdiction, it's possible that the officers who respond won't have those devices used to remove the barricade, or the tools to remove the barricade devices. I hope that helped Egg, who asked that question. So we are coming up on 1 hour, and I don't want to take anybody else's time. I know how busy things are, especially if in Ohio we're slowly getting all of our students back into the classroom, and I don't want to take any more of your time than I have to. I will stay on for a few minutes to see if any more questions come up. I want to recommend that tomorrow you join us again at the same time so that you can listen to Cindy talk about so you can hear Cindy talk about human trafficking, because I think it's a phenomenal topic. And you're going to get if you go to the resource section, you'll get the 5 layers of school safety. You'll get a copy of this. But there's my email address. There's my phone. I swear to you, I have a little Post-it note on my phone so that as soon as I get done with this, I know to turn the ringer back on. I answer my phone when I can, and I answer all emails. So those of you that have been here today and have to jump off, I do ask you to take the survey when you're done, just so we can do an assessment. Can I get the email with the resources? I believe I have lost it. Could you send that again out to everybody real quick, Sabella? I don't know. And Carlos, I lost part of your question, but not the whole thing. Okay, so hold on just a second. And I'm going to try to find it for you. Oh, criminally. Okay, so now, Sabella, you have to tell me, and I can't. If I Sabella, tell me how to put this in so I can show it to everybody. Oh, can you guys see where she has the access to the drive? Sabella, can you talk to me? Because I don't know if they're seeing that. If everyone should have we just gotten that. So please let me know if you didn't. They're saying they did not. So where would they go to get that? If you go, I see it on the question or the chat feature on the side. Sabella put it in. Bobby doesn't see it either. See if you can see it now. Hey, but I will tell you this, folks. I am. Cheryl put it in. Excellent, Cheryl. See if you can see it from Cheryl. Okay, I now have the information. And so if you copy my email address, Gary@safeguardrisksolutions.com, I promise you I will email it to you. And heck, if you ever get a chance, connect with me on LinkedIn too. Carol, do you see the answer or not? All right, let's see. All right, now, Carol, I just put that in, and it's right below you. And I just put it down there for you. Bobby says he can see it now. Okay, people can start to see it. Great, 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 great. But again, folks, you have my email address. If you need anything, please, please don't hesitate to contact me, and I can get you this link as well and anything else that you need. But it's 14:27 where I am. I don't know where you guys are, but if you need to log off, have a great day, and I hope to see you all tomorrow.